So the next overall concept that I want to make sure we're comfortable with as we dive into metabolism is the phospholipid bilayer. So this is a structure of the cell. Now, first of all, let's think about cells. A cell needs to divide its inside from its outside. A cell needs to regulate what can come in and out of it. And that is what the phospholipid bilayer does to create a membrane around the cell. So the membrane of the cell is going to separate the inside of the cell from the outside of the cell. Now, the other thing that I want to keep in mind here is that our bodies, the outside extracellular space is a very watery environment, and the inside of our cell, the cytoplasm, is also a very watery environment. So the structure of our phospholipid bilayer that makes up our cell membrane needs to be comfortable facing the watery environment of the extracellular space, as well as the watery environments of the cytosol or the intracellular space. So what makes up our phospholipid bilayer? What makes up our cell membranes? Well, they are made up of phospholipids. A phospholipid here has some interesting chemical properties. So here we see that the phospholipid has this phosphate head. The phosphate head is hydrophilic, water-loving. And then attached to the phosphate head are two fatty acid tails. And those fatty acid tails are hydrophobic or water-fearing. So the phosphate head of the phospholipids are very comfortable being in contact with the watery extracellular environment and the watery cytosol. However, the fatty acid tails are not comfortable being exposed to that watery environment because they're hydrophobic. So that gives insight into why the phospholipid bilayer is made the way it is. We have two layers of phospholipids, but they are oriented in such a way that the phosphate heads, are pointing out towards the extracellular space, and then the second layer of phosphate heads are pointed towards the intracellular space, and then each layer has its fatty acid tails pointing towards each other. So that is the phospholipid bilayer. Now, the other thing that you will notice in this picture are all of these big blue structures that are extending through the phospholipid bilayer. And that is representing the proteins that are integral and go right through the phospholipid bilayer. Something else to keep in mind about this phospholipid bilayer is that it is semi-permeable. Some things can cross right across the phospholipid bilayer. Most things can't. So things like gases or very, very small compounds or non-polar compounds can cross right across the phospholipid bilayer, right in between those phospholipids. However, anything that is charged, like ions, and anything that is larger, like glucose or amino acids, they can't get across the phospholipid bilayer. Instead, they need to have a specific protein transporter that is going to allow that compound to get across the phospholipid bilayer and allow it to get in or out of the cell. And so this offers the opportunity of the cell to highly regulate what can get in and out of the cell.